Bavaria, Germany. May 2nd, 1945. 30 seconds to execution by exposure. The forest clearing smells like turned earth and old blood. Captain Daniel Cross steps through morning mist that clings to pine trees like the ghosts of questions no one wants to answer. His boots find mud, then something worse, a hole, no, a grave. And in it, a man, German, maybe 40, buried to his neck in soil still loose enough to shift when he breathes. His head sits on the ground like something placed there, separate, forgotten, waiting. Beside the hole, a shovel, its handle wrapped in dirty cloth, stuck in the mound of excavated dirt like a flagpole claiming territory. Carved into the wooden shaft, 4 words in German. Fertig Mädchen. Finish it. Cross stops walking. His rifle feels heavier than it did 10 seconds ago. The German's eyes track him, not pleading, not angry, just watching, waiting to see what kind of man Cross is, what kind of American, what kind of human. Behind Cross, Sergeant Miller catches up, sees the scene, and stops mid-breath. Jesus Christ, Miller whispers. Get the platoon, Cross says quietly. Perimeter, now. No one comes in here without my say. Sir? Now, Sergeant. Miller disappears into the trees. Cross kneels. The German doesn't flinch. Up close, Cross can see it, the crust of dirt around the man's neck where sweat has dried, the redness of skin rubbed raw, the shallow cuts on his scalp where someone, multiple someones, kicked him while he was going down. Wasser, the German croaks. Water. Cross unslings his canteen, tips it against cracked lips. The German drinks like a man who's forgotten the shape of mercy. 3 swallows. 4. Then he turns his head away. Danke. Then, in accented English, Thank you, Captain. Cross sits back on his heels, studies the hole. It's almost perfectly cylindrical, deliberate, dug with precision. This wasn't rage work, this was ritual. How long have you been here? Since yesterday. The German's voice is gravel and exhaustion. Afternoon, maybe 4 o'clock. I have lost the time. 20 hours, buried to his neck for 20 hours. Who did this? Does it matter? The German almost smiles. It's the saddest thing Cross has seen in a war full of sad things. I am here, they are not. The why does not change the what. Cross looks at the shovel, at the words carved deep into old wood. What's your name? A pause, as if even this basic fact of existence, might be dangerous. Klaus Brenner, Sanitator, Medic, 17. Panzergrenadier Division, or what was left of it. Why are you in a hole, Klaus? The German closes his eyes. When he opens them again, something has shifted, a decision made. Because I chose wrong or right, depending who you ask. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit subscribe, because what happens in the next 5 minutes will redefine what you thought you knew about enemies, about justice, and about the choices we make when the war is ending, but the dying isn't done. Cross stands, circles the hole slowly, looking for what? Evidence? Justification? A reason to walk away? The forest is silent except for wind through pine needles and the distant sound of his platoon securing the perimeter. This far into Germany, this close to surrender, every village is a minefield of rage and righteousness. Tell me what happened, Cross says, from the beginning. Klaus Brenner takes a breath. Dirt shifts around his shoulders, buried somewhere below the surface. There was a farmhouse, he begins, 3 kilometers west. American patrol came through 2 days ago. One of your men was wounded, badly, shrapnel through the abdomen, bleeding internally. Cross knows this story, has lived variations of it 100 times. Your unit engaged them? No. Klaus shakes his head fractionally. My unit was gone, dissolved, dead or deserted, or disappeared into the chaos. I was alone. Just me and my medical bag and a farmhouse that used to belong to my sister before the war took her too. He closes his eyes, remembering. The American was 19, red hair, freckles like stars. He kept asking for his mother, kept saying he was sorry. Sorry for what? I do not know. But he said it 20, 30 times. Cross feels something cold settle in his chest. You treated him. I tried. Klaus's voice cracks. I had no plasma, no morphine, no proper instruments. I had alcohol to sterilize, thread from my sister's sewing kit, and hands that remembered what to do even when the supplies forgot. Did he live? He lived. Klaus opens his eyes. For 18 hours he lived, long enough for his patrol to come back, long enough for them to find him sleeping in my sister's bed with clean bandages and soup I made from the last potatoes in the cellar. The pieces start falling into place. Cross sees it now, sees the shape of the crime. They took you. They thanked me first. Klaus almost laughs. The sergeant, big man with a scar here, he would gesture to his eyebrow if his arms weren't buried. He shook my hand, said I was proof that humanity survives even in hell. He gave me his chocolate ration, real chocolate. I had not tasted it in 3 years. Then what? Then they left, and then they came. Who? My neighbors. The words land like stones in still water. Villagers, people I had known since childhood, people whose children I delivered, whose fathers I sat with when they died. They came at dawn, dragged me from the farmhouse, called me Vaterlandsverräter, traitor to the fatherland. Cross can picture it, the crowd forming like a storm, the accusations building like pressure, the moment when someone picks up a shovel and says, I know what we should do. They said I gave aid to the enemy while German boys bled out in the mud, said I chose American life over German honor, said I was worse than a deserter, worse than a coward. Klaus's voice goes flat, empty. They said I deserved to die slowly so I could think about my betrayal. So they buried you? They buried me, told me the earth would decide. If I could free myself, God wanted me alive. If not, he doesn't finish, doesn't need to. Cross looks at the shovel again, at those carved words. Finish it. That's not German justice, Cross says quietly. That's murder with ceremony. Is there a difference? Klaus asks. At the end? When you're in the hole? Sergeant Miller returns, materializing from the tree line like a question mark in uniform. Perimeter's secure, sir. Found tracks leading west. Multiple people. Left in a hurry maybe 6, 7 hours ago. Cross nods, doesn't look away from Klaus. Get shovels, and water, and Private Chen. He's got medical training. Miller hesitates. Sir, are we? We're getting him out, Sergeant, unless you have a problem with that. Miller looks at the hole, at the German medic buried to his neck, at the shovel with its carved command. No problem, sir. Just wanted to confirm. He leaves. Klaus watches this exchange with something like wonder in his exhausted eyes. You are digging me out. Yes? Why? Cross crouches down again, eye level with a man whose entire body is underground. Because that shovel says, finish it, and I'm not in the business of finishing what mobs start. Because you saved an American kid's life when you could have let him die. Because... He pauses, searches for the truth under all the reasons. Because if I leave you here, I become the kind of officer who walks past murder and calls it jurisdiction. I am German, Klaus says softly, your enemy. The war is over, Klaus, or near enough, and you're not my enemy. You're a medic who did his job. Cross stands. The only people who should be in a hole are the ones who put you in it. It takes 20 minutes to dig him out. Private Chen works with careful hands, clearing dirt from around Klaus's shoulders, his torso, his hips. The German's uniform is torn, filthy. His hands, when they emerge, are swollen and discolored from 20 hours of restricted blood flow. When they finally pull him free, Klaus can't stand. His legs have forgotten the concept. 2 soldiers catch him, hold him upright until circulation remembers what it's supposed to do. Chen checks him over with professional efficiency. Dehydration, exposure, contusions, possible frostbite in the fingers. Nothing that won't heal if given time and basic care. He needs a hospital, Chen reports, but he'll live. Cross nods, looks at Klaus, who sits now on the pile of dirt that was supposed to be his grave, drinking water in small measured sips. "Thank you," Klaus says again. "I do not have other words, just these. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Cross lights a cigarette, offers one to Klaus, who takes it with shaking hands. "I need to know something. That American soldier you saved, what was his name?" Klaus inhales smoke like oxygen, exhales slowly. "He told me, Private First Class Timothy Webb, from somewhere called Ohio. He talked about a girl named Sarah, about a dog named Duke, about his father's hardware store." Klaus looks at Cross through smoke and sunlight. "Why?" "Because," Cross says, "if this goes up the chain, if anyone asks why we intervened, why we used resources on a German prisoner, why we didn't just leave you for the wolves, I want to be able to say we were repaying a debt. I did not save him for reward. I know, that's why the debt matters." 3 days later. U.S. Military Government Office. Temporary HQ. Cross sits across from Major Richardson, who reads the incident report with the kind of silence that means trouble. "Let me get this straight, Captain. You found a German national buried in a hole. You assumed he was a victim. You allocated men and resources to extract him. You brought him to our medical station. And you did all this without knowing if he was actually innocent or if this was legitimate partisan justice." "It wasn't justice, sir. It was attempted murder." According to him. Richardson sets down the report. What if he's lying? What if he did something that deserved punishment? Like saving an American soldier's life? Like killing German civilians? Like being Gestapo? Like any number of things that would make a village want him dead? Cross leans forward. "I interviewed him, sir, checked his story. Private Timothy Webb, Ohio, 2nd Battalion, treated for abdominal shrapnel wounds 3 kilometers from where we found Brenner. Webb confirms everything. The medic saved his life." Richardson sighs, suddenly older. "You know what my problem is, Cross? Not that you saved him, but that for every Klaus Brenner, there are 10 actually guilty men claiming innocence. And we don't have time to investigate every sob story. Then we make time, or we decide that justice doesn't matter anymore." "Justice?" Richardson almost laughs. "Captain, we're occupying a country that spent 12 years perfecting industrial genocide. The villages are settling scores we don't understand with grievances we can't arbitrate. Our job is to keep order, not referee every blood feud. With respect, sir, there's a difference between a blood feud and a lynching." Silence fills the space between them. Richardson finally speaks. "Brenner stays in protective custody. We'll process him through proper channels. If his story holds, he gets DP status and a ticket west. If it doesn't, he doesn't finish." "Understood, sir." "And Cross, next time you find someone in a hole, call it in first. Let someone else decide if they're worth digging up." Cross stands, salutes, walks to the door, then stops. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Why not? You've already done everything else freely. If we start deciding who's worth saving based on what's convenient, we're no different than the people who dug the hole." Richardson studies him for a long moment. "You're a good officer, Cross. Maybe too good. The world we're building here doesn't reward that." "Then maybe we're building the wrong world, sir." From Captain Daniel Cross's letter home, May 8, 1945. Dear Sarah, the war in Europe is over. Official surrender came today. Men are celebrating, drinking, crying. I am writing to you instead. I cannot tell you much about what I have seen. The censors would cut my words to ribbons. But I can tell you this. I learned something about enemies. We are taught to see them as monoliths, as uniforms and flags and ideologies, as the other. But the truth is simpler and more complicated. The enemy is a medic who saves your life when he could let you die. The enemy is a mob that buries one of their own for showing mercy. The enemy is the part of ourselves that says, "Not my problem," when someone needs help. I found a man in a hole last week. German. The village wanted him dead for saving an American soldier. I got him out. Some people think I was wrong, that I should have let local justice run its course. But here's what I know. If justice requires burying people alive, it's not justice. It's just revenge wearing a uniform. I will be home soon. I will be different than when I left. I have seen things that change you, done things that haunt you. But I can still look at myself in the mirror. I can still say, I tried to choose right when the world was choosing wrong. That will have to be enough. All my love, Daniel. Klaus Brenner survived. Processed through displaced person system. Immigrated to the United States in 1947 under sponsorship from a veterans organization. Worked as a physician's assistant in Ohio, specifically Ohio, where he spent 30 years in a small practice treating the children and grandchildren of the war that tried to kill him. In 1963, he attended a wedding. The groom, Timothy Webb, the best man, a former Army captain named Daniel Cross. In 1989, Klaus died peacefully in his sleep. His obituary mentioned that he had saved countless lives during and after the war. It did not mention the hole. It did not mention the shovel. It did not mention the 20 hours he spent buried while the world decided if he deserved to breathe. It mentioned only that he was kind. And that kindness, someone once told him, is the only loyalty that matters. Captain Daniel Cross left the Army in 1946, became a teacher, spent 40 years teaching history to high school students who thought they understood war because they'd seen movies. On the first day of class every year, he would tell them one story, just one, about a man in a hole and a shovel with words carved in wood and the 30 seconds it took to decide what kind of person he wanted to be. The war taught me tactics, he would say, strategy, logistics, how to kill efficiently, how to follow orders. But the only lesson worth remembering is this. He would pause, let the silence build. When you find someone buried alive and the shovel says, "Finish it," you dig them out. You don't ask permission. You don't calculate convenience. You don't wonder if it's your job. You dig. Because the opposite of courage isn't cowardice. It's indifference. It's walking past the hole because intervening is complicated. And if we become the kind of people who walk past holes because the people in them are inconvenient or foreign or accused of crimes we didn't witness, then we've already lost every war that matters. Cross died in 1998. His students, hundreds of them, came to the funeral. Many had become teachers themselves. One had become a human rights lawyer. Another worked for the Red Cross. At the reception, they told stories, not about his teaching methods or his grading curve, about the lesson of the whole, about the choice he made in 30 seconds that defined 50 years, about the radical, dangerous, essential idea that seeing suffering demands response, that being human means more than surviving. It means choosing to act as if other people's humanity is as real as your own. The shovel still exists. Donated to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in 1994 by a German historian who found it in a barn outside the village where Klaus Brenner was buried. The carved words are still visible. Fertig Mädchen. Next to it, a placard tells the story. The hole, the medic, the captain, the choice. Every year, 30,000 people stop to read it. Most move on quickly. It's one artifact among thousands in a museum full of atrocity. But some people stand there longer, staring at the shovel, at the words, at the question carved into wood and time. What would you have done? Would you have dug? Or would you have walked away? There is no moral to this story, no clean lesson, no simple answer. Just this. In May 1945, in a forest in Bavaria, a man was buried alive for showing mercy. The people who did it called it justice. They called it righteousness. They called it loyalty to everything they believed in. They were wrong. Not because their grief wasn't real, not because their losses didn't matter, but because the moment you decide that someone's humanity is negotiable, that some people deserve holes while others deserve dignity, you have already lost the thing you claim to be defending. Klaus and Brenner were not heroes. They were men who, for one moment, chose differently. Klaus chose to dig. Brenner chose to heal. Both paid prices for those choices. But they could still look at themselves in mirrors. They could still sleep without seeing holes everywhere they closed their eyes. And in a world that was burning itself alive and calling it necessary, that mattered. That still matters. If this story changed how you think about enemies, about justice, about the moment when you have to choose between what's easy and what's right, share it. These stories survive not because they're history. They survive because they're human. And humanity is the only side worth taking. Subscribe. Because next week we're uncovering another moment when someone stood in front of a choice they couldn't walk away from. And what they decided changed everything.